So just to say that when you leave, please make sure that you get your passport sticker put into your passport. The ushers will have them up. Sabine, just at that door or at both doors? Both doors? Okay, great, lovely, thank you. Well, welcome everybody. Nice to see all of you here. Let's just start with just a moment of collecting ourselves. So just take a moment to bring ourselves present to ourselves, welcoming and blessing ourselves and one another and this space. And the work we are gathered here to do this afternoon. Thank you. So, oh dear, my partner watched the web streaming this morning and he said I say a lot. And I just noticed that my first word was I will do my best. Have a moment of silence instead.
And how perfect that I just told you how elegantly you speak.
Thank you. So we have an hour and a half together, and my plan is to just spend a few minutes finding out what your own experience of subtle activism is, and then introducing you to this particular approach, which comes out of the Lorien incarnational spirituality approach. And we will, I'll go through some principles there. If you have questions, ask those. And then we will do a subtle activism piece of work. What I'm suggesting that we have it around holding the leaders and decision makers in the world, in our various countries, nations, collection of nations, just given there seems to be so much division and discord and lack of listening and lack of collaboration, that seemed a useful thing to hold in our session today. But there are principles in this approach to subtle activism that you can also apply and put to work in any other situation as well. But it felt important to work with a specific, some kind of specific in the world. So first of all, let's just take a few minutes here from maybe 4 or 5 of you. What is your experience of subtle activism so far? What do you do? What do you understand by it? And we have some. Oh, so Sohini has a mic, and whoever speaks first will then pass it to whoever wants to speak second. So, your experience of subtle activism, what you understand by it, what it means for you, why you're interested in it.
Thanks. My understanding is that it's about using the benefits that we've gained from our contact or the influence of the subtle energies in our lives and finding ways of bringing them to help the people around us and the world as a whole.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Stephanie Mines, and I'm the convener and vision holder of Climate Change and Consciousness, which will be here in 2019, April 20th through the 26th, 2019. And I have read the Lorien material, but I haven't studied it in depth. However, I believe that it was subtle activism that got me to develop the conference and to bring it here. That's the only explanation that I can come up with for what I experienced. Even though I'm not a student of the Lorien Foundation, I'm not a student of subtle activism until this moment, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to find out what happened to me, you might say. So
Okay,
maybe
good.
that's
Okay.
enough. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who else?
I'm Joyce Hardman from Canada, and I'm part of a group of water care people who are particularly interested in keeping a nuclear waste dump a mile away from the river. And we started with a lot of anger and fighting against, because it was so obvious, you know. But we've been exploring. When you fight against, you increase the fight, really. So we've been exploring, moving toward finding the common value, unitive values, and doing it as gently as possible through creating a song, creating ritual. And we don't know how it's going, but there's a wonderful alliance going with the indigenous people as well. So they're teaching us a lot about how to use ritual and energy to move in the right direction. So I've been reading, I just read Terry Patton's book, The New Republic of Heart, which is really influential. So pretty exciting.
Yeah. Thanks, Joyce.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
So, I'm Sarah Zelen from Belgium, and well, I don't know much about subtle activism, but as far as I've understood, it seems that it is something that my guidance want me to do a lot. It seems like quite often I find myself to kind of send the information that I'm receiving, like somewhere up there. And it seems that, yeah, I have this kind of ability to do it. Like if some people around me, or if I'm reading something, or need something, if people around me need something, or if I read something that, yeah, brings some struggle or something, it seems like I often kind of feel the need to make a wish for either that person or the situation. And well, someone told me, oh, this is subtle activism actually, so I'm quite yeah, happy to hear more today about it. You know, yeah.
Great, thank you. Right, let's take
Yes.
one more.
What?
One more. Yep. You.
I am the last one?
You are.
Okay. So I don't really know what subtle activism is, but I have a couple of points of reference from my own experience that may count as subtle activism. And so the first is at the end of an ayahuasca journey, I found myself kind of wishing, conjuring a beautiful world, a beautiful planet. And I found myself doing that, and I was in the company of many other people who were doing the same. And I had this image of putting my shoulder to this wheel and adding this large wheel and adding a little bit. And the second point of reference is I've been praying for years now, maybe 4 or 5 years, in the context of vision quests in the traditional Kodamara, praying for a beautiful world on this planet. That so, and sort of that continuous focus on beauty. And I don't know if those are subtle activism or not.
I think so, yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry we don't have time to hear from more people. We need to kind of fit everything in this afternoon. But that's lovely. I really like what's been said so far. The idea that... Sorry, I just said again. Yes, let's send a blessing to the Every time you hear an imagine a silence. Actually, would you do that? I'd appreciate it. So holding a vision of a beautiful world certainly is something that is a subtle activism. Wishes and prayers also engage with subtle activism. Using what we've learnt from our experiences on spiritual and subtle levels, bringing that in also is extremely helpful. And somebody here was saying about, you, Joyce, about a lot of outer activism as well, and bringing in specific qualities as you work with that. I think I first became interested in subtle activism when I was living in South Africa, in my 20s, my early 20s, and I was very involved with anti-apartheid movement, as many people were at the time. And a small group of us were also in touch at that point with some spiritual or subtle beings that somehow for a few months kind of embraced us and gave us kind of messages. That seemed to be the form. That, way back then, the connection with subtle worlds was very often in the form of messages. People were looking for messages, as David was talking about last night. And one of the messages that we got was that we needed definitely to engage in social action. But what was really important as we did that was to hold the people, particularly that we were protesting against, or the situations that we were wanting to change, to hold the people involved in that in love. And that would create a field in which the change could come about more smoothly and gracefully. And that without that, there was going to be polarization. I mean, there already was polarization, but that if we could hold an oppositional position with a connection with the people who were in the opposite position to us, that held much more of a potential for change to come about, rather than things getting so polarized that they would go into like huge conflict. So I suppose that was my first experience of combining subtle activism. I didn't call it that at that point, but with social activism. And subtle activism is definitely, it's a complement to outer activism. It's not a substitute for it. It's something that can hold a larger container around things. One of the examples that I like is Emoto, who did the work with water, the blessing of water that allows the crystalline structure of water to change. When you bless water or hold specific qualities, the shape of the water shifts. And at the same time, we need to do as much as we can on a physical level to clean up water. Not necessarily just do the subtle work. Although who knows, if enough of us did it, maybe that would have an effect, enough of an effect. But certainly that is a resource that is important as well, that inner work, that subtle work. And what's important to me, what I notice about the Emoto work, is that what happens is the shape of something shifts. And I was talking this morning about shape shifting and our capacity to shape shift. And this particular approach to subtle activism involves using our own subtle energy field, our own presence, in conjunction with the spiritual and subtle energies and presences of the world to create and hold a more spacious space, to bring about more wholeness, more peace, more, actually really more wholeness. And one of the premises behind this approach to subtle activism is that there is a spiritual sentiency within everything that seeks to create wholeness, either internally or externally. So in each of us, there is a spiritual sentiency that seeks to create wholeness in ourselves, both within ourselves, but also in relation to our environment. But that through everything, there is this sentiency that is seeking to create wholeness. We may not be able to grasp that wholeness mentally, but there is a spirit that we can trust that is working, and we can work in collaboration with that. This approach to subtle activism also, it's not about sending particular qualities or energies to a situation or to a person. Rather it's about generating a quality, inhabiting that quality and embodying it through all the different levels of ourselves, while at the same time bringing our physical, subtle and spiritual selves into alignment. So I was talking this morning about taking the shape of something, taking the shape of compassion. If I really connect with the quality of compassion, how does that feel in my heart, in my body, in my mind, in my subtle field? I become a resonant field of compassion. I'm embodying compassion. And if from that space I then open to the spiritual forces of compassion, that creates a larger field, something that's bigger than me, on my own, that also at the same time allows a larger presence of compassion to become grounded in me and through me, and by becoming grounded in me and through me, it becomes more available to the world. So in a way we create, by embodying compassion through all the different levels of myself, I also create bridges, a bridge to the subtle levels and the spiritual levels. And together we create a field bigger than either of us on our own. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this approach to subtle activism is a way of practicing that. And because we exist on both physical and subtle levels, and because the world also exists on both subtle and spiritual levels, if I am standing in the fullness of myself, holding and embodying a particular quality, that quality becomes available through the subtle dimensions of the world, which are not connected on a physical level. So if I am holding the quality of compassion, for instance, and I'm wanting to connect with a friend or, say, a family member on the other side of the world, if I'm holding that particular quality and I then connect with that person, that friend, that family member in Australia, for instance, that quality becomes available to them on the subtle levels, as much as if they were sitting next to me, I would be able to touch them or see them. Now, whether they pick it up and engage with it is another matter, but we are all affected by the subtle environment. We both affect the subtle environment and we are affected by it. So if I'm holding a space of compassion around someone, that is available to them on the subtle level, and they can connect with it, and it can have physical, or it can have like effects in the physical world as well. You know, it's not particularly esoteric. It's the same thing as like on a local level. If I was sitting with a friend who was going through something difficult or stressful, and she was, you know, very upset and not knowing where to go, and something dreadful had happened, and I could enter into that same space with her, and, you know, take on that shape, and also get stressed. Oh, this is dreadful. How could that have happened? And, you know, I just amplify her own experience. Or I can hold just a place of stability, of openness, not necessarily have solutions. Maybe I would have some suggestions, but maybe not. I can also just hold a space around her, a space in which she can be open to more things, in which she can become more grounded or settled, in which she might be able to connect more with her own inner intelligence and spirit. So that's a form of subtle activism as well, you know, and I'm sure you've all experienced that kind of thing, that holding an energetic field can create the space in which somebody else can make shifts. Or I can just take on their energy and just amplify it, and nothing particularly happens. So this approach to subtle activism, it requires a subtle activist. And it requires a subtle activist who's embodying something. So not just say, oh, wouldn't it be nice to send peace to that situation that's very fragmented and disturbed and troubled. If I do that from a place of being disturbed and troubled myself, it's not actually going to have very much effect. So this is also what's called an incarnational approach. We're being asked to incarnate a particular quality for a particular time, to invite in allies who are also connected with the situation we're working with, and then to hold the situation or the person in that kind of collaborative field. So that's kind of the principle behind it. Any questions so far, or thoughts? No?
Well, it strikes me that
Could we? Here we go.
I do some distant healing work, and
Right.
it strikes
Yes.
me that perhaps that is an experience that is similar to what you're describing. I mean, it's very specific because I'm working on a particular symptom or situation in
Yes.
someone's body
Yes.
with a particular application, but I am also at the same time, because it's distant, holding the field
Right.
for a particular outcome.
Right, yeah.
And perhaps to some extent all healing interventions are similar, but the distant healing even more so because of the fact that it's contained internally.
Right,
Is that-
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
All right, good.
Lovely, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So as we shape ourselves energetically, we shape the environment around us. So this approach involves taking the shape of something, holding it, but then also from there, as I was saying earlier, opening up to other beings or presences that are in resonance with that, so that together we hold a larger field. Some years ago at Findhorn, the foundation, which was the community then, was the community and the foundation at that point were the same entity. And we had got into a really substantial position of debt. And to the extent that we'd borrowed from the bank, and we were not even in a position to meet the interest payments on the debt, let alone repay anything. So it was like a real financial crisis. There had been something like 300 people in the community at one point, and the community went down to just a little bit over 100. People just left because it was too difficult to be here. And it really looked as if we might be going under, we would be going under. And I'm going to share a few things that happened about this. There was a community meeting on one Monday to talk about it. I happened to be not here at the time. We have a place called Ered on the west coast of Scotland where the foundation caretakes the island. And I had taken a group of people out there, a group of people who were part of a program, and we were there for a week. So on the Monday night on which the community meeting was being held, I had a dream. And in the dream, I was in a plane and with a friend. We were sitting together in the plane, and the plane, something happened and it began nosediving. And we realized that this plane was going to crash, so there was no way we were going to survive. And everybody in the plane was screaming. And my friend and I, in the dream, just remind you this is a dream, we thought, well, okay, we're going to die. Let's go out in as calm a way as possible. So we began repeating to ourselves something that Eileen Caddy, one of the founders of the community, came constantly in her guidance, which is the phrase, all is very, very well. So we began just holding this, all is very, very well. You know, here we are crashing, all is very, very well. All is very, very well. And it really was. Inside ourselves, it was fine. And suddenly, in the dream, what happened? The plane that was nosediving leveled out and landed. And we were all safe. And what we realized was it was because we had created this field that all is well. Something in that had enabled things to shift on the outer level so that it had the consequence of the plane actually landing. Now, we had not been holding, please do not let us die. You know, we'd not been holding a particular outcome, we'd just been holding a space, a spaciousness. And for me, that was just a really profound thing. And I think this is a key aspect in this approach to subtle activism as well. It's not about going for particular outcomes. It's not attempting to influence things in a particular direction. It's more about holding a spaciousness in which that spirit or sentiency that seeks to create wholeness, which is probably much wiser than any of us can kind of connect with, other than momentarily, to support and expand that so that things can fall into place on different levels. Now, what happened in Findhorn in those days, the meeting, one of the things that came out of the meeting that Monday evening was a decision to have everybody meet once a week in small meditation groups and just meet to hold the space and to hold whatever it was that needed to happen. And that's what happened for the next few months, year or so. Now, everybody also, you know, it wasn't just about doing inner work. There were also all sorts of things that people did to kind of raise money. to do extra funds. I made little candies that I sold in the publications department. I made little ducks, puppet ducks, and sold those. Yeah, and there were a group of us that committed to raise £100 each. And, you know, it wasn't necessarily going to kind of sort the debt, but it was all contributing towards it. And, you know, as you can tell, we came through because we are still here. Different form, but we're still here. So for me, that was a really good example of bringing outer work and inner work together to support a particular situation. You know, we were also open to, I mean, we didn't want the foundation to go under, but I think to quite an extent, you know, we were open to something of that possibility. So doing subtle activism doesn't mean don't have any preferences. It's absolutely have preferences. But every now and then, and work towards them, but every now and then hold spaces that are just open. And engage, so in those meditation groups also we were engaging with the angel of Findhorn and the landscape angel and all the beings of place that are part of here as well. Kind of just blessing whatever future was emerging, given that we had a preferred future. So those are some of the principles there.
When you said hold some preferences instead of just holding space, what is the need to hold a preference?
It's not so much holding the preference, it's like knowing that that preference is there, acknowledging it's there, but also not pushing it. It's not going, hey subtle worlds, please make this happen. It's like, I'd really like this to happen. This is my preference. And if there is a bigger pattern of wholeness and coherence, if there's something better, then may that emerge.
Because I'm at the point where I don't know about what I prefer. It's about really, I trust that the bigger pattern will emerge.
Great.
And
Lovely.
And then it's like, well, should I hold the preference?
No. All I'm saying is if you have preferences, it's fine to have preferences. You don't have to have preferences. But, you know, if you start looking at the political scene, you know, should we be in the EU? Should we not? Or do we support Brexit? Do we not? How do we feel about Trump? What's happening in Syria? You know, we have preferences. And we have opinions, and we have judgments. So, you know, and again, it's not saying don't have preferences, but certainly for the period of doing subtle activism, you need to put those aside and to create an open, neutral space in which something more can come in.
So, following on that question, what about intention? Having an intention in the work. So, in creating an open space, do you just hold that with intention? Is there a specific intention or no?
You mean for a specific outcome?
If not a specific outcome, that's a really good question. I don't think it's quite an outcome that I mean. Just maybe intention like a purpose.
Can you give me an example?
So, for example, create a beautiful world, or more peace in the world, healing the environment.
Right, yeah. So those in a way are like qualities.
Okay.
You know, beauty, beautiful world. You may have pictures of what that looks like, but behind the pictures there's an essence of beauty. So holding beauty as a quality, or holding peace as a quality, that's a key aspect of subtle activism.
So without going the next step into, I would like the world to be more beautiful.
It's you can like the world. It's fine to like the world to be more beautiful. I'm not saying this correctly. It's fine to like, to want to have the world more beautiful or more peaceful. But what that looks like may not be what you're holding in your mind or your awareness. But the quality of beauty or the quality of peace. So if we were working with peace or with beauty, it would be a matter initially of just taking the time to create beauty in yourself. What is your felt experience of beauty? Remember times of beauty? And I think those things that call us like a beautiful world, those are really important, and holding an embodied presence of beauty in you and in your world contributes to the emergence of a beautiful world. But we don't know what that's going to look like, necessarily, or peace. Does that make sense? Answer your question? Yeah, thank you. That's a nice question.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. Could you pass this over to her? Thank you.
So that's difficult. That's difficult if I understand what you're saying. And if you strongly, either in a heart way or in an intellectual way, you still really want to have some injustice to not happen, or to be reversed. I mean, it's possible to say, okay, Spirit, you know, I think this would be the best course, but if it does not go this way, it might be a larger outcome here. Okay, so I'll just come up with my question.
Yes.
If we are going to co-create, where is the place for the intention and the desire of self? I mean, should just self be not present? Or should self be present?
I think it's important that self be present.
Okay.
Because otherwise because we're part of it. One of the things I find is that if I'm holding a particular energy or quality that I want to have present, and if I also open to the subtle beings that are also working with that, there are new insights and awarenesses that start coming out of a shared field. So I may actually get ideas of specific things to do as a result of it that I wouldn't necessarily have thought of just on my own. Then I go out and do them, and I either do them, gracefully with respect for the other people, or I go out and do them ungracefully, and we practice and we do things. And but I've also found the practice of returning to something more, it's not quite neutral, but it also comes out of caring. Subtle activism comes out of a relationship of caring for particular situations or people or the world. And it's partly our caring that makes a difference and allows us to make the connections. I don't know if that's answering your question.
Yes, it is.
Good. Okay.
Okay to ask.
I just want. Oh,
No, you go ahead.
I just wanted to ask about how you see the relationship between the subtle worlds and the social world, because it's through the social world that I'm thinking of the comment about is self there. You know, it's through the world of the person, interpersonal connections, larger social groups, etc., eventually out to the cosmos. The links between that are also
Can you keep
the
that
links
close to
between that are also very complex, and throughout the conference I'm aware it feels like a bit of a gap for me sometimes. We're talking about the physical world and the subtle world, but within that we have this hugely rich social world.
Yes.
And part of the social world are the structures that create the injustice and so on.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering how you see the relationship between these two realms, really.
Yeah. Well, I think there are subtle beings that also work with social structures, and working with them can help.
I think my question might be related.
Could you-
I think my question might somehow be related to what you're suggesting, because it sounds to me like you're talking about relationships.
Yes.
And so it's the focus seems to be on how we are subtle activists, or can be subtle activists, but there also are ways in which, for instance, in my experience, I am the recipient of subtle activism. In other words, subtle activism has been directed towards me in regard to social structures. So that, and I'm not quite sure where the origin of this is, which is why I'm here, really, which is to understand how I became the recipient of a subtle activist activity that directed me very specifically towards social structures that need subtle activism within them. Does that make sense? I mean,
I think so.
So it's relational.
Yes.
But we're talking about us being the initiator of the subtle activist relationship. What about being the recipient of the subtle activism in the service of social structures?
Or the co-creator, in a way that it's it isn't one or the other. It's that we're working together. It's that we're actually working together.
Yes, and how to heighten the awareness of the working together to be more successful in the ultimate co-collaboration towards the aim of the subtle activism. How to cultivate a state of being that is more relational, more actively relational in the co-collaborative engagement.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Here at Findhorn, a lot of the departments work with the angels of departments. And those angels or beings, in a way, are holding all the different elements of the departments, the people, the activities, the physical things, the energies in the environment, and also the connection of the departments, not just on the material or personal level, but also their relationship to the body of Findhorn as a whole and the body of the angel of Findhorn. So it's also possible to work more directly with. There are presences connected with everything. So there are some very powerful beings that are connected with, for instance, what's called the Palace of Westminster in the UK, the centre of the political activity. So if we were doing some subtle activism on behalf of, say, decision makers just in the UK, some of the allies we might connect with would be the angel of the Palace of Westminster, the soul of the UK, because that also has a lot of interest in the structures. It's a very important element. Our social structures. I agree. And having that connection and holding that around the structures or decision makers, again, it influences only the subtle environment. It influences conditions, it's to do with conditions, not with results. But it can have results. So, a lot of our politics, for instance, there's a lot of negativity, for instance, directed towards our decision makers and our politicians. We have lots of opinions about them, and again, it's not about not having opinions or preferences, but also holding a space around them in which they are not the opposition. We're not saying we love you and we support everything you do at all, but we're holding space, and we're working with, connecting with those beings that are seeking to have the social structures serve in a holistic way rather than in an oppositional or fragmented way. Now, that's quite a lot to do just individually, to move into that space, which is why it's also really helpful and important to be working with subtle allies who are able to hold more of that space. Because it enables us, even if just fractionally, we can hold that. Because we're incarnate beings with physical bodies embedded in a physical universe, emotional and mental as well, if we can even fractionally hold those energies, they become more available. They become more incarnated. And that does or can start to influence the outer world conditions. And I think there's only so much we can do on our own. David Spangler tells a story of a friend of his who was traveling by plane in the US at some point, and there was a child on the plane, a baby, who was crying and would not settle, and got louder and louder and louder screams. Mother tremendously upset as well, unable to create a space to calm the baby down. So he thought, well, I will do, I'll hold a field of peace and calm, and I will just enfold this child in that. So that's what he did. That's one aspect of subtle activism, embodying a particular quality and holding a personal situation within it. Nothing happened. Then he became aware of a presence in the plane, a presence of kind of like compassion and caring, who sort of said, I can help. So he linked with this presence, and that created a larger field, the two of them together now, and they held the baby in that field, and the baby calmed down and settled. And then he thought, okay, that's that sorted. I'll leave this other being to take care of it, and I'll have a nap. And moved himself out of the triangle, in a way. And the baby started crying again. And he realized that what was needed was actually the both of them. It was needed the physical, incarnate person holding a particular field and this other being. And that together they were creating a larger field that could help the situation. And that's a similar thing. We need to do it, but we don't have to do it on our own. And it serves both sides, you know, the beings who are wanting to support more wholeness, more coherence, more justice, more social systems that support the whole of society, all that sort of stuff. But without people on the ground, in a way, who are also holding that energy, acting, but also holding an energy, there's a limit to what they can do. And there's a limit to what we can do. So it really is a co-creative partnership.
It sounds like it's creating that bandwidth that I think, was it David spoke about?
Yes, that's right.
Widening that.
Yeah, we need this for the live streaming.
Sorry, it's about creating that bandwidth, that wider width.
Yes.
That then allows the outer to come and
Yes.
link in
Yes.
more.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it sort of connects there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's more potential.
Yes. Thank
yes.
you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So shall we do a piece of subtle activism? So as I said at the beginning, I thought it might be good to focus on leaders and decision makers. And what I would suggest is that you connect with the ones that, the people or the situations that have the most energy for you, that you're holding most in your sense of caring or on your heart. That may be the political leaders in your own country or land. It may be somewhere else. It doesn't really matter whether, you know, with subtle activism, we have the capacity to influence situations that are quite distant from us. You know, we have a subtle activism group here, and we've several times focused on the situation in Syria, and just holding energies around everybody and everything involved there. There's many different factors. So maybe just take a moment just to connect with which decision makers and leaders you would like to hold as we do this process. And it might be your local council. It might even be decision makers and leaders in your family. It can be as kind of small or as large as you wish. Okay, everyone got something? Now, this is quite a lengthy process, because we're going through several steps. Particularly if you're not familiar with this, it's important to go through the different steps. Once you have the sequence or principle, it's something that you can do very quickly. Just move through them. But we are going to just take time to talk through them, move through them, come back, and then we'll have a bit of space for sharing. But just warning you, it is a little lengthy, so it is going to need attention. And if you go to sleep, well, that's fine too. So let's start by bringing our awareness and presence here, into ourselves and into this space. Acknowledging and blessing ourselves and one another, and this space that holds us. Also acknowledging and blessing the subtle beings and energies present here, and the work we are gathered to do here together. Now take a few moments to think of a good friend or friends. Recall the connection and flow between you, the trust, the openness, and the ability to entertain differences while also maintaining connection. And to allow differences to open new perspectives and possibilities that will benefit all of you. Recall now also times of creative collaboration you have experienced with others. Let those memories live now in your experience. Times when both you and others have been affirmed in your contributions to something larger than any of you individually. Experience and feel that supportive, collaborative, open experience of relationship. And breathe it into yourself. Notice how that experience shapes your body, your heart, your mind, your subtle self, your soul. Now feel and experience in you and around you the light of your unique beingness, the light of your individual sacredness. Just rest in the light and love and grace of the presence of yourself. And from this space, sense your connections to the rest of humanity, to the world of nature and the land, and to whatever spiritual forces and images of sacredness are meaningful to you. Feel those connections enhancing your presence, enabling you to be part of a larger wholeness, graced with compassion and love, and an intelligent, wise awareness. Hold your sense of yourself within that enhanced presence. And feel its energy go out to the immediate environment. As connecting in loving ways with the specific world around you and with the sacred from which it arises. And now focus on the quality of relationship that you connected with earlier. And with the quality of constructive and creative collaboration. And with openness. Fill yourself with this quality. Fill this space with this quality. Inhabit it as if it is your identity. Stand in it with your full presence. It is through this that we engage and interact with the subtle worlds, and through this that the energies become available in the subtle realms. Now imagine the felt sense of this space expanding to form a sphere of energy around you. This is your alliance space, a collaborative space. Now into this space, open to and invite in an ally or allies to help with today's subtle activism. These might be the qualities you are holding as they express through the planetary subtle field. The angels of these qualities coming into resonance with the qualities in you. They might be specific beings who are holding and working with the situation or people that you are focusing on today. Maybe the soul of a country you are working with. Maybe the soul of the world. Maybe the angel of humanity. Maybe the ancient presences of the land and the devas of the mountains and landscapes and waters of the land or place you are focusing on. Allies who have held the life and well-being of that land and all on it for thousands of years. Sense all these beings with you. Let your energies blend in a collaborative field. And sense that field deepening and broadening as you do this. Now, in this space of relationship, connectedness, and creative collaboration, imagine held in the presence and spirit of these qualities and in this field. Imagine all those leaders and decision makers on our national stages and on the world stage who are perhaps split apart by differences of politics, belief, attitude, religion, economics, and who may be experiencing these differences in fearful or threatening ways that narrow and entrench them. hold and feel and sense these people held in the grace of a loving, peaceful spirit in which relatedness, communication, and collaboration is possible. Don't try to make anything happen. Just hold them in the spaciousness of constructive and creative collaboration and relationship. In that energy of collaboration and relationship that you are holding and embodying here. Hold the space with a sense of honor, spaciousness, and of the rich diversity that is humanity and the planet. And recall a sense of relationship, connectedness, and collaboration, and hold these feelings as well as you hold the space. Just hold the potential for change and newness of perspective and relationship. And imagine this energy flowing down and into and through the situations where decisions are being made that affect people collectively. Focus on any particular situations that call your attention. And we'll have a few minutes now just to hold that in silence. And finally, imagine that you are a lighthouse. Sense yourself as a source and generator of light, radiating a light of stability, peace, calm, creativity, collaboration, and love. Imagine the subtle fields surrounding you, surrounding us, calming and becoming clear and stable, able to receive and hold an outpouring of light from the spiritual levels. Imagine this clarity and stability spreading far and wide, linking up with the light of other similar lighthouses, other people who are seeking to embody and express collaboration, creativity, and love. As these beams connect, a web of light is woven that empowers all of us everywhere. And now take a moment to give thanks for any and all help you may feel you received in doing this work. Give thanks to any allies that have been present with you. Give thanks to one another, to all who have participated here, both those present and those in the live stream. Give thanks to the space and to yourself. And then take a moment to step consciously out of the sphere of alliance space that you and we created here. Feel your awareness returning to your body, sensing the chair beneath you, your feet on the floor. Then carrying this presence of light in your heart and mind, let your awareness return to this room. And open your eyes. So as we're a fairly large group, it doesn't give us a lot of time for sharing in the group as a whole, and it is quite important to share things that have arisen. So I'm going to suggest you just find a partner and take a couple of minutes to share each way. Anything that came up for you? What was the situation you were focusing on? Any particular leaders or situations? Any sense of any insights, movements, difficulties? Whatever. And then we'll have just a few minutes at the end for sharing collectively. And those of you who are participating in the live stream, you might like to just write down what happened for you as a way of grounding it. So if you haven't switched over already, move towards doing that now.
The one I like the most, probably part of her name is Marina, and she's a very environmental woman. She's from and she's not making the research. It's polarized between the left wing and the right wing. Yeah, very to be a balance between those situations and to grow up. Marina, call her Marina. And she's a very big activist in environmental issues. She's mixed, dark skin, and I think she's very tough, like she has this sort of anger inside her.
Okay. I realize you may not be quite finished with the sharing, that we have only 5 minutes left. So perhaps you could take any unfinished sharing out with you into the tea break. Oh, thank you. So I just want to kind of outline the steps there. That was a long process, but actually the steps are quite simple. The first step is standing in yourself. Standing in your own presence, in the fullness of your presence, in your own, what we're calling self-light.
Process that you're elucidating now.
Yes, I'm just kind of going over the steps. That was a long exercise that we did, but there's actually some specific steps within it. So it's connecting with yourself and the fullness of yourself, moving perhaps into a kind of more neutral space, but also connecting with your generative presence, the light of yourself. It's also helpful to connect with the environment, because in a way that is an ally to you as well. Helps you stay connected with the physical environment. And then to generate and embody the quality that you are wanting to have available to the particular situation that you are focusing on. So that becomes a felt, embodied presence in you. It becomes your shape. And the next step is to create an alliance space. The image of a sphere can be very helpful. But if you find something else that works better for you, that's fine. But just some kind of space that you can invite allies into. So that you're establishing a collaborative field. And then you can either bring the situation that you are working with, or the people or person you're working with, bring that into the field, into the space, into the aligned space, and allow it just to be held within it. That will, in a way, like seed, it's subtle, the subtle field around that situation or person. Or, alternatively, imagine yourself in the situation, just kind of being present there, holding the energy. One time of working with the quality of peace, in a particular situation, people imagine themselves just walking around the place where the difficulties were, just holding and embodying the quality of peace. And that can be very effective also. So both of those ways can work, whichever you feel more comfortable with. And that actually is the step of subtle activism. That's the place where you've built the field, and then you hold the field, you hold the situation together. And that can take a couple of minutes, it can take many minutes. Different people again some people can do it very quickly and they know it's done. Others want to take more. That's fine, whichever. And then when you feel ready, when you feel it's complete, then just give thanks to whatever presences have been with you and consciously step out of the aligned space. Back into your everyday personal self. And do whatever you need to do in order to feel steady and grounded and balanced and back in your environment. So you've opened a door and now you close it. And then go and do whatever comes next, like have a cup of tea, go for a walk.
Just do the lighthouse piece. That was really helpful.
Ah, okay, great.
That's one variation that felt like
Yes, yeah, thank you, yeah. Okay, that's it. So we'll just have a quiet moment and go. And please remember to get your passport stickers as you move out of the door. So let's just take a moment to just let this settle.